Now, one thing that's been really helping the financial stocks since the election is the promise of financial reform, getting rid of some of the onerous regulations on the big banks. Why don't we bring in John Allison? He used to head a big bank, BB&T. He is a possible replacement for Daniel Tarullo. He's the guy who wrote all those bank regulations. Welcome to the program, John. Good to see you, sir.
Good morning.
Now, I'm being pejorative. I'm being sort of speculative here. I'm saying that you may be on the Federal Reserve, you may be replacing Daniel Tarullo, and I'm assuming that you would want to get rid of those banking regulations. Is that accurate?
It's certainly accurate that if I had the authority, I would get rid of most of the regulations that have been imposed since Dodd-Frank, and a lot that really weren't specifically related to Dodd-Frank, that the regulators have simply arbitrarily tightened lending standards that have had a big impact on small business growth rates and job creation by small businesses.
So, Mr. Tarullo is leaving. Does that mean that it's pretty sure that we are going to get an end to those onerous banking regulations? This is going to happen. Can you say that?
I think it's very probable, whoever goes in that role, because the regulations have been destructive. And I think President Trump will recommend somebody that wants to roll back the extreme heavy-handedness of the Fed that's been very, very bad for the economy.
We've got, I know a few community bankers. They tell me that Dodd-Frank, the banking regulation, that was just awful for community banks. The really big banks could handle it because they've got enough firepower and lawyers to handle it. But the community banks, they took it on the chin. I take it that if we did get rid of those details, those rules, the community banks and smaller regional banks, they would look pretty good?
Absolutely. There's been very few new banks created since Dodd-Frank, and many merged away. The big banks have achieved what's called regulatory capture, and by that I mean the top 5 or 6 banks. In fact, I testified to Congress for the Choice Act, which would be a major reform of Dodd-Frank. And guess who was fighting getting rid of Dodd-Frank? The large banks and the Democrats. It was ironic. The Democrats are criticizing the large banks, and they were both opposed to doing something about Dodd-Frank.
It is the world turned upside down, and that's a fact. One last one. Our production team, 3 members of it, have had real trouble getting a mortgage. They've got good jobs, they've got the money, yes, and they're having real trouble with the paperwork getting a mortgage. If we repeal Dodd-Frank or change the rules, would they have an easier time getting that mortgage?
Absolutely. The CFPB, which is part of Dodd-Frank, has been very destructive. And what they've done is ironic because they set standards that are actually low in terms of debt service to income. They're actually subprime standards. But simultaneously, they radically tighten the paperwork so that if a bank makes a loan and they hadn't dotted an I across the T, then suddenly the borrower doesn't owe the money back. So he had an enormous increase in the paperwork to get mortgages, and the average consumer has no idea what's going on. It's very destructive.
John Allison, if I had a vote to put you on the Federal Reserve to replace Daniel Tarullo, you would have my vote and a lot of our viewers. John, it was a pleasure having you on the show. You come back soon, please. Thank you, sir. Got it.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.